you?
Yes.
That was you? Okay.
Please.
I think you talked to Ed.
Yes, I did. So, yesterday, pursuant to Ohio Criminal Rule 12C, I filed a motion to dismiss the criminal complaint against my client, Mr. Richard Hubbard. Today, as you heard, the judge did not rule on my motion today. She wants to give the prosecution time to reply to my motion. Nevertheless, it is my belief and contention that the objective evidence, which is freely available at this point in the public body, clearly demonstrates that my client, Mr. Hubbard, did not resist arrest. This is also not a huge surprise to me. It is consistent with what we've seen from many Euclid officials in their efforts to ratify and condone the conduct of their police officers. This conduct, unfortunately, has led to not only the assault on Mr. Hubbard and the unjust prosecution of Ms. Tirado, but it also has led to the death of Luke Stewart, possibly the shooting of Mikhail Hill, the beating of another Euclid City official, and many other violations by and against the citizens of Euclid. This is part of a pattern of conduct which is unconstitutional, and we will defend Mr. Hubbard and prosecute all civil claims that he is entitled to the fullest extent of the law. We must demand accountability if things are ever going to change. There is a lot of public comment regarding there being two sides to this matter, but I think any unbiased and objective observer can clearly tell that there's but one side that is true, and that my client, Mr. Hubbard, neither resisted arrest nor was complicit in any manner in the assault and battery committed upon his person. Now, Mr. Hubbard wishes to give a brief statement.
Yeah. So really, as of right now, I'm hurt and afraid. I did not resist arrest. I work, I stay out of trouble, and I never thought this would happen to me. When the officer told me to get out the car, I got out of the car. Stepping towards me, he said, face away. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I turned around immediately. When I turned around, I was attacked. I did not resist arrest.
What went through your mind at that?
It all happened so fast, it was a blur, but I know I did not touch the officer. I never had my hands barred. I never touched the officer, not once.
What was it like?
Afraid for my life. Afraid. Afraid, not even the word. If I could pick another word, I wouldn't even. Afraid.
Can you tell us about the injuries that you suffered?
At this time, he's still under medical evaluation, and we are not going to speak on his particular injuries at this time.
Richard, were you being instructed at all during the arrest to roll over and get on your stomach or anything? Were you instructed anything during the arrest?
The officer told me to roll over, but he had me pinned. I couldn't move. The only thing I did was hold my hands up to deflect the punches.
Richard, when you watch this video, can you even believe that that's you in the video?
I wish it wasn't me, but it happens to be me.
And how did you feel today coming to the courthouse? There are obviously Euclid police officers here. What was that like for you?
I'm afraid of all officers. I'm nervous and paranoid.
Was there a trigger that you remember things going from just being pulled over and thinking, oh my gosh, there is an officer behind me, to when it really de-escalated? Was there a tipping point that you remember where it went from, I got pulled over, to what we saw in that video?
No.
We also, with Ms. Tirado, Richard's girlfriend, would also like to deliver a short statement regarding some of her excited utterances which people are trying to construe against Mr. Hubbard.
Richard did not do anything to deserve this. He did not resist arrest. I know that people are trying to use my statements and my screams on the video as evidence as if Richard was resistant. But in all honesty, I was afraid, I was scared, I was confused. I would have never believed that a police officer would beat on someone for no reason. I have two police officers, two of my uncles are police officers in Puerto Rico, and they go by the law, they serve and protect. And that's why I always believe that police officers treated everyone, all citizens, appropriately. He did not resist arrest, and he did not do anything to deserve this.
When you saw what was happening, what went through your mind? I mean,
I was confused, I was scared, I thought that they were going to kill him in front of me. And I wasn't sure what was coming out of my mouth. All I knew, it was that I was begging them to stop. That's all I remember.
Did you even have any, like, conscious thought at that point? I mean, you just sounded so desperate on the video.
I was desperate. The last thing I wouldn't be able to pass. If something would have happened to him, I would have never been able to pass through that. Never.
Make no mistake, this was a violent attack on our client. There's also additional information that we want to disclose at this time regarding the conduct of the officers after Mr. Hubbard was arrested. Ms. LaShonda Malone was an eyewitness to the attack on Mr. Hubbard. And she's going to speak about the conduct of the officers as she observed it.
I saw Richard's arrest. He was cooperating with the officer. I saw Richard get out of the car, and he started to turn around. The officer grabbed his arm and immediately started beating him, throwing him to the ground. And after they put Richard in the car, they was laughing, dapping each other up. It was terrible. I felt for Richard. He was listening to the officer, and the officer just took it out on Richard.
you heard them laughing.
Yes, and dapping each other up after they put Richard in the car.
What did you think?
It was disgusting to me. Like, they felt like they did good, and they didn't.
If there wasn't eyewitness video and eyewitnesses, do you think that this case ever would have gotten out in the public?
I made sure it got out. And with my daughter watching, she's scared of police now, and every time we see a police officer, she say, "Mommy, they go to police, they're gonna hit me." And with her seeing that, and I really didn't want her to see it, but she did. And now I have to watch out with her, with police, because she don't like police.
And sir, what do you think of, I mean, since this has all happened, just at the Euclid City Council meeting, we saw Euclid police respond in riot gear to the peaceful protesters. Knowing what happened to your client, how do you feel when you see something like that?
You know, there's a concept in the law called res ipsa loquitur. Usually it's used in torts to discuss accidents that don't happen unless someone were negligent. The literal translation is, the thing speaks for itself. And I think that the response that we saw from the Euclid police officers in bringing in stormtroopers with batons to a peaceful protest speaks for itself.
And you did file that motion to dismiss today. You're hoping that the judge will rule on that soon.
I filed the motion to dismiss yesterday, after I had already notified the prosecution that I would be filing a motion to dismiss. However, I'm anxious to see what their reply brief will be.
How do you feel about the department's handling disciplinary-wise of the officer at the center?
Well, I cannot speak to the institutional practices of Euclid City Hall and their administrators, but the fact that this same officer who attacked Richard had attacked another Euclid City employee 2 weeks prior and was still on active duty is very telling. The fact that they hired this officer after he had been forced to terminate from the Menor Police Department for constitutional violations is very telling. It's part of this pattern and practice which has victimized not only my client, but also Luke Stewart, also McHale Hill, also that city employee, and many other residents.
Are you going to meet with the mayor, or the chief, or the officer, or anybody today? Is there any plans?
That is not my intention. I am here to represent Mr. Hubbard, Ms. Tirado, and advocate for their rights to be vindicated, and that is the extent of my representation on this matter.
Just to be clear, did you file a motion to dismiss all charges against your client during this arrest?
Yes, I did.
And one thing, this has obviously been viral. People have been sort of duking it out on Facebook, and the comment that I've seen from the other side is, well, why don't you just submit and figure it out in court? And I'd like you to get a chance to address that, because I've seen that a lot.
You know, I want to be very careful here because I don't want to prejudice anyone. I'm only going to ask that people keep an open mind, be objective, be unbiased. Your own two eyes do not deceive you. You see my client get out of the car. You see my client begin to turn around. If you count it off, he had less than 2 seconds before he was jacked up and brutalized by that officer. This is the objective evidence. Make up your own minds.
Are you looking at a civil suit at this point, or we don't know yet?
Well, we absolutely are looking at a civil suit. It is imperative, however, that we focus on the criminal and traffic charges first and make sure that we dispose of those before we can move further. We still have a lot of time before any statutes of limitations will be involved, and we want to make sure that when we do file our complaint, it's done deftly, intelligently, and effectively.
And we heard that there's possibly a civil rights investigation against this officer. Are you aware of that? Have you been contacted about that?
All I know is hearsay. I have been contacted about it by some other media informing me that this officer is being investigated by the BCI and the FBI as well. I also know that the BCI is currently investigating Patrolman Rhodes, who was just placed on desk duty yesterday for his shooting of Luke Stewart, whose family is finally starting to get a little bit of the accountability and transparency that they've been demanding since he was killed. It's unfortunate that we have gotten to this place in the city of Euclid, but again, it is what it is, and the thing speaks for itself.
Do the police have in their possession any video or audio of the incident?
That you don't have?
Dash cam.
I'm still awaiting discovery on this case, so whatever visual evidence that they may have, I am not privy to other than what's been freely disseminated already in the media, which is virtually identical to the video that we've already seen go viral.
What's the next step?
The next step is to continue to chop the wood that's in front of us right now, get Yolimar and Richard acquitted of all criminal and traffic charges, and then move forward with the civil case.
Are you surprised at all by the Black Lives Matter response?
Listen, I'm not surprised at all. I cannot speak on the activism, but I can tell you, as a Black American who has witnessed uncountable atrocities in these last 5 years, there's definitely a feeling in the public body that our lives just do not matter, that there is no justice, that there is no accountability when these aggressions are committed against us. And the thing that I find ironic is that many of the same people who call themselves so-called conservatives, who espouse values such as liberty, freedom, and an antagonism towards government tyranny, will join in on the side of government tyranny as it relates to our oppression with this issue of police brutality and excessive use of force, which is endemic not only here in Euclid, not only here in Ohio, but the entire United States of America. Understand, this is an issue of national security.
Would you mind stating the spelling of your name for us real quick?
Sure.
So everyone has it?
It's Chris McNeil, C-H-R-I-S.